your own drinks, like peasants. Oh, it's fantastic. We're calling this. We're live. We're streaming. We're like 8 seconds into it, so people will start joining momentarily. We'll give the internet time to warm up. You know how it is, and we'll get settled with our drinks. I just have water. I'm lame. I'm so lame.
Where's your bourbon?
It's just not for me. Look, if I have one bourbon, I'm going to have all the bourbon, and that's just like, see, first of all, personal delivery.
Yes.
Lucky you.
Yes. No. So, my husband is not a bartender by trade, but he loves making cocktails. And actually, he spent a lot of this self-isolation doing online classes, and he's done a lot of online cocktail classes. So this is actually a Sazerac.
Oh, perfectly themed, because isn't that like an old-timey?
It is old-timey. It is an old-timey drink because it has a little absinthe in it, which was illegal for a while. So, yeah, but no, he's been taking all these classes. He just took a martini class. So we are constantly having fantastic cocktails in the house. So.
And look, everybody, like there's a little absinthe in that drink. So stay tuned. You never know what might happen. That's amazing.
It could get crazy.
It could get crazy. It could get crazy in here. That's perfect.
Well, you got to have a little bourbon for happy hour. So.
Oh, I love it. I wish the day, just as often is the case, the day I really lost control of the day, just to be fully honest. So I'm just happy to be here.
I
see Rachel Ann, I see Celissa. We've got a bunch of folks out there. So I've seen people coming in from both Facebook and YouTube, which is terrific because that lets me know that both are working. Fingers crossed. We do have AutoCrit team members out there in both communities and in the YouTube channel to help if you can't find the stream. Of course, if you can't find the stream, you probably can't hear me say that. Am I sure this is water? I should double check.
Can't you get your servant, your house servant?
You know what?
A person?
I have a cat, and girl, you know who's the servant in that relationship.
I've got a dog. Yeah.
See,
he rules the house.
I am just out of luck. I'm actually fortunate. She's sleeping. She likes to sleep, and she likes to stay by the printer when she hears it go off. And so I just printed some of our questions for tonight. So she is on guard. Well, and by on guard, I mean she's sleeping over near the. So
we trained our kids young. My kids are teens now, but there was a joke one time because I was feeling lazy on the couch, and I think my daughter was. Wait, can I get arrested for this? My daughter was like 10, and I was like, I said, pour me more wine. She's like, fine. And so she poured it like she was pouring a glass of grape juice. So we now have a joke, like, glass of wine. Do you want a regular pour or a Sadie pour? I really enjoyed it. It was a fabulous glass. So yes, my kids are my servants. Other than that they're teens, they rebel a little.
Well, yeah. I see that you had many good years though in there, like before they got wise and wise ass.
Yes.
Teenagers.
Yes.
So,
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So let's see, 3 after. Oh, we've got a crowd. Let's go ahead and let's jump in. Let us officially kick off historical fiction happy hour. Beth here from AutoCrit. I am with author Jennifer S. Brown of Modern Girls. I have tape flags in there because I actually gave some examples of like opening and closing the first chapter. And I was like, oh, I'm using this. So Jennifer S. Brown, author of Modern Girls. And I have to tell you, when I finished this book, and Jennifer knows this is true, I emailed her and I'm like, okay, I don't care what else you're doing. Like, I need you to drop everything stat and tell me what happens next to these characters. And Jennifer says, well, I don't really know if I want to write a war novel and they're going into wartime. And I'm like, I don't care. Don't care. What you want, I'm the reader. So I am going to need to know at some point, Jennifer, what happens in Paris. And you know what I mean?
Yes.
So all that being said, so Jennifer actually grew up, little background, little intro, grew up in Miami Beach, which makes people question every winter what she's doing in New England. I feel like we already know the answer to that. You're in what, Boston now?
Suburbs of, yes.
Oof. Winters in Boston, fabulous for two things, writing and drinking, both of which we're going to talk about tonight. Talk about or do or both. We do have a write-in right after this. You've got your bourbon, and I hear you snowshoe. Is that?
Love it.
I am Southern, so I don't really.
I am, when I came up here, my husband's from New Hampshire, so he snowboards and both my kids are into skiing, but it's a little fast for me. I think that's something you need to start younger. But snowshoes.
You're not so terrified that everything's going to break.
Right. Snowshoes, you just strap on your feet and you can go off into the woods and it's beautiful and it's calm and it's a great way to sort of clear the mind. So I recommend it highly.
Do you get a lot of inspiration for books from snowshoeing? It's muffled. I love the sound. It's like so muffled when you're out in the snowy woods. Of course, I also read a lot of horror, so I'm definitely.
I view those things as usually not so much inspirational, but as a way to work through problems. I used to be a runner, and unfortunately, I can't run anymore. My knees, and I used to use running as a way whenever I was having a plot problem. I'd go for a run and just and in fact, I would take my phone sometimes because if an idea came to me while running, I'd put the voice recorder on and it sounds like an obscene caller. It's like, okay, so what Jane needs to do now is she needs to, and spit it out. So yeah, so for me, it's a way to clear the mind and to work through the problems of a novel, of a plotting or something. Yeah.
I think that's a terrific idea. We definitely recommend voice recorders on your phone. Do a video to yourself, do an email to yourself, do whatever it takes. The idea that we're just running along, and I use Siri in my earbuds. So I'd be like, hey, Siri, make a note that Jackson needs to blah, or whatever it is. Oh, I know and I hate to listen to it back, which is good because it's usually enough that I hear reminder, Jackson needs to do the thing and the whatever, that to be like, oh, I remember all the rest of it now. I don't need to listen to myself huffing and puffing. I felt so strong and sleek and athletic, and in reality, I'm like some sort of I just let's move on. Okay. So let's talk. Wait, first, did I miss anything in your intro? What else would you like to share with us about kind of how you got into writing? I suspect it had something to do with even the early days of Nano, 2001. Dare I say it? 2001, when it was all done in Yahoo groups.
Yes. I still have those emails. I still have a lot of those emails from Chris Beatty. Chris Beatty. Yeah, Chris Beatty was the one who founded it. No, I actually was writing before that. So,
wow.
I always sort of, even as a kid, I love to write, and I have books of terrible, terrible poetry that I did with I illustrated, and I have the stories that I wrote in elementary school where I'd get myself into a hole. So I'd just be like, and then she woke up, all the things you're not supposed to do. And
wait, you're not supposed to do. I'm learning so much on wow.
So So I actually went to college for filmmaking. I went to NYU for filmmaking, and I thought I was going to be a screenwriter. And I got out and I was trying to write screenplays, and people kept saying to me, you have too much exposition in your screenplay. There's too much in here. And I thought, well, maybe I'm supposed to write prose. So I actually, I worked in publishing for a little bit, managing editorial work. So copy editing and proofreading kind of stuff. Before I went for my MFA in creative writing, I went to University of Washington in Seattle.
Ooh.
And it took a while. I was doing all short stories and essays until NaNoWriMo. NaNoWriMo was the first time I thought, you know what? Because I always thought novels are too much. They're too intimidating. I can't do it. And so NaNoWriMo was the impetus to go for it.
Wow. I firmly believe that is what hooks in a lot of rhymos, just because it helps you think about it in manageable chunks. It's 1 month, time bound, it is 1667 a day if you want to get down to that level, and a lot of people do. But it really helps you to think about, I can do anything for a month. I can do anything for a week or a day. I can sit down and write for an hour. And it helps develop that practice so strongly that hopefully it's a raging success and you get 50,000 words, and then you have a wonderful novel to rest and then edit, and then, well, edit some more.
And write some more, because 50,000 words is not quite novel length.
Oh my goodness. Do you happen to know how many words are in Modern Girls?
So actually it started out, it's morphed over the years. So it started out as 119, I think, thousand words. And then my editor said, we need to cut it a little bit. So I think I got it down to like 110, but then we wanted to do some additions. So I think it ended up about 113 or 114,000 words. But 80,000 words is kind of the sweet spot for a novel. Like, that's sort of the 80,000 to 100. Historical fiction sometimes goes a little bit longer, but you're best off with 80 to 100.
Good to know. Given how far behind I personally am in Nano, maybe we'll just do NaNoWriMo quarter.
You know, one of the things
NaNoWriMo
I think it's so important to emphasize is it doesn't really matter if you hit the 50,000, because if you only write 200 words, that's 200 words more than you had on October 31st, right? It just, like, this is just to get you writing. And if you hit 50,000, great. And there are tricks you can do. I can tell you some tricks, you know, on November 29th to get those extra 5,000 words. But, you know, it's just to write. And if you're writing, then you've won.
Perfect. That is so much more encouraging than to think about how far behind I am and how my graph looks like this right here. But I do want to come back to, I'm going to just make a note. By the way, if anybody on our stream has questions for Jennifer, pop them in our comments and we'll work them in as we continue to chat here. I do want to come back to your secrets for the 29th, because we're hosting a write-in on the 29th to kind of do a final push to the finish. Mm-hmm. So any tips and tricks, we'll definitely get to the 11:29 or the 11:30 and 11:59 p.m. East Coast time tricks and tips. I did post a meme the other day we did that said, and then it's in an essay, I cannot. And then during Nano, it's like, henceforth, I am unable to not things and bleh. So get that word count. Fix it in editing. And I'm going to nickel any time that we've all said that, especially during NaNoWriMo. Yeah. We'll fix it in editing. You
shouldn't even be thinking about editing during NaNoWriMo. You should just be getting the words on the page. It's all that matters. It's like, don't even think about what comes next, right? Annie Lamont in Bird by Bird, you know, she talks about I don't know if I can say this word here, but the SH, you know, the bad first draft, right? You just got to get it on paper, because you can't edit a blank page. So don't even worry about it now. Think about it later.
I'm trying my best. Working with AutoCrit, which is an editing like software, it makes it really hard because my whole brain is trained to do that. I was going to show you we have a little mascot called Otto, and you just made him very sad, but we'll get
but you will need to edit eventually. You do need to, but it's not something to be thinking about in November. It's not what you should be thinking about during NaNoWriMo.
So I feel you might agree with some of the approaches that we've been seeing around, like, put in placeholders. Don't worry about character names. They'll come to you. I do like double pointy brackets, and I'm just like, something goes here. Something makes her seem edgy. That kind of thing. It's like, just go back and get it later. Getting the story out is the most important. What do you think that's?
So that's not just a NaNoWriMo thing. In fact, I was on a writing retreat with a lot of writers, not last summer, but the summer before, and it was beautiful in Greece. And we were all talking, we're all published writers, and we all talk about the fact that you hit that point in your revisions where you're like, something brilliant happens here. You know, she says something really smart. You have it like in parentheses, and it's like, oh, now I got to think of something smart or something brilliant, or, you know.
Oh, pressure's on. But that's, I call that a problem for future Beth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And my favorite is actually, I'm working on a revision right now. And as I go through it, sometimes I just have in my comments, ugh. And I'm like, oh, great. Now I've got to deal with the ugh. Like just something I wrote that I just hate. I'm like,
future you is like,
I have to fix the ugh.
That's going to become my new keyword to go back and like just do a search for ugh.
Yeah.
Of course, my characters may say it too. They're pretty much just me. So let's go back and talk about Modern Girls, which I love. And I got to take these tape flags out because they're, no, she didn't even read it. This was written during Nano. How did you come up with the idea for Modern Girls? Where was that inspiration? Did it happen before Nano and then you're like, oh, this is perfect timing? Tell me how that came to be.
So let's just say, so first of all, this was not from my first NaNoWriMo. Okay. This was from my
nanos ago.
From many, many nanos in. I will say that the first 2 or 3 novels I wrote on NaNoWriMo, I didn't do anything with. Okay. They were very self-indulgent novels. I knew that they weren't really marketable or publishable. I mean, there are things if I wanted to someday to go back and really rip apart. I mean, they need a lot of ripping apart. And I do want to say, I don't know if you know why am I saying this, but I actually had a novel before Modern Girls that I wrote in NaNoWriMo, and that's what got me my agent. I got my agent with my previous novel called Continuity. And that one did not sell to publishers, but it got me my agent. And so, and it was great having someone to validate, sort of be on my side and to do it. And so that was written. And I also want to emphasize that I've cheated in NaNoWriMo, and both Continuity and Modern Girls were done over 2 NaNoWriMos because, as I said, it was 119,000 words when I started it. And nobody cares. No, in fact, there's even a board, community board, chat board called Rebels, who are purposely breaking the rules of NaNoWriMo, like on the NaNoWriMo site. So
you can actually award yourself the Rebel badge this year. Right. And I find that so hilarious. I really love that they've embraced the Rebel.
Because the point is to write, and as long as you're writing, that's great. So I wrote Continuity. It didn't sell. And then I had this idea. Continuity was a contemporary novel. And I had this idea. So when I was, the premise of Modern Girls is it's about unwanted pregnancy during the 1930s. And so that's all I'll say about that. And the reason I began to think about that was when I was pregnant with my son, who's now 17, I was considered advanced maternal age, which is really a geriatric pregnancy, which is what you always want to hear.
That starts at like age, I don't know, 20.
It was 30. No, it was 35. At 35 is when that starts. So, I had to go in for all this testing, and you have like all the millions of medical forms. And I called my parents up to find out medical history. And my mom, they were telling me what they had, my grandparents, whatever. And then my father said, this is probably too far back, but your grandmother had uterine cancer. And I said, all right. I wrote it down. I said, I think that's too far back. And then he said, yeah, my mom always said it was because of that botched abortion, but I don't think abortions cause cancer. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, I don't think there's a connection. I'm like, no. I know there's no connection between abortions and uterine cancer. I'm like, what do you mean my great-grandmother had an abortion? And he said, well, it was in the 1930s. And he's like, I really don't know much about it because I think she just couldn't afford to have a baby. And it just got me thinking. And I just thought, wow. And so, it was in the back of my head, but I thought that historical fiction was going to be too daunting. I just thought it's so much research. There's just so much involved. But I couldn't get rid of the idea. And so when NaNoWriMo, before NaNoWriMo started, I started reading some history books. I started doing some research, and I decided just to dive in. And really, even in a contemporary novel, you have to do research. You always, research somebody's job, what they're doing. It's just a different kind of research. And I loved it. It was so much fun. And I just went with it. And luckily my agent loved it. And that one sold.
So, and I love it as well. And it feels like the time period in the 30s would be really interesting to research. And we spoke a few months ago with Crystal King, who does hundreds and hundreds of years ago in Italy about chefs and popes. And she loves that research.
Crystal King is a good friend.
Wait, what? How did I
Crystal
not
King's a
know
good
this
friend of
already?
mine. So yes,
Oh,
we're in the same Slack group for writers to cheer each other on during NaNoWriMo.
how did I not know this? Okay, I'm going to email Crystal after this. So, but I think it's all about finding an era that you love and that you like researching and that you're passionate about. And in Crystal's case, like folding in the food aspect. I mean, it really is much better when you're genuinely excited to research, because when you just think about it like, ugh, research, that sounds like an assignment or a
Yeah. You have to be passionate about it. It has to be something that you're truly, truly interested in. And it's difficult too staying on track, because as you research, you're going to find other things that are so interesting. And I actually have bookmarks for things to look at later for future stories, or things that I just have to share on Twitter, or send to my friends. There was one I was researching been researching prohibition, and I found this article in the New York Times about they solved the murder of this cow. This cow had been killed, and it turned out someone was hungry. He killed the cow, but he didn't get the steaks because when his wife found out where the cow came from, she refused to cook it for him. And this was like front page of the New York Times in 1930 something, right? And so that you get stuck reading this, and it has nothing to do with what you read.
Wonderful.
So you definitely have to be careful about that. But on the other hand, if you can work that into your novel for NaNoWriMo, you've got a whole lot of other words.
That's a November 29th tip, I think. Like, cow. Dead cow. That's hilarious. A slow news day. What are you going to do with that, really? You mentioned that one of your previous novels, Continuity, that I think is still not in print. It got you your agent. How did that happen? So you weren't represented by anyone, and then you're shopping this novel. Talk to us a little bit about how that all came together.
So people talk about going to conferences and making connections and getting. I didn't do any of that. I went to my local Barnes and Noble, and I pulled books from the shelf of authors I liked or I thought were similar, and I looked in the acknowledgments to see who everyone's authors were, and I wrote them down. You could probably do it now on look inside the book online, but I just sat there and I pulled out books and wrote down things, and then I researched those agents and I wrote them letters and said, hi, you represented this book, and I think that you might therefore be interested in my book, or you are interested in such and such, and my novel has that in it. So it's through the slush pile. For those who don't know, slush is unsolicited manuscripts. So it was just through the slush pile. And I emailed the woman who would become my agent. And, you have to follow everyone's rules, because every agent, some people want just a query letter. Some people want 10 pages. You follow the rules. And I think she wanted 10 pages. And she emailed me, said, send me 50. So I sent her 50. And she's like, okay, send me the rest of it. And it was actually really funny, because she called me up and she said, I hated your ending. Like, I wanted to throw this book across the room. Like, I hated the ending. I was like, okay. She's like, would you fix it? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, okay. Cause she was very worried, because some authors come in and say, it's perfect. Mm-hmm. Nothing's going to change. But when she saw that, I was like, I want to make it the best it's going to be. And when she outlined her reasoning, I was like, oh. I have to say, every time she's I love her. Whenever she gives me critiques, at first I'm like, and then I think about it for a while, and I was like, oh my God, she's totally, totally right. She knows this stuff. So yeah, so just old-fashioned way, slush pile. It can be done. It is done. You don't have to spend money on conference. It's great if you can go to conferences and those things. I'm sure that they're fun, but you don't have to.
You could walk away with a free tote bag from a conference.
Well, is it really free if you've paid, $300 for the conference? But
look, we're just going to move on. Your logic doesn't have any place here. Look, I bet you think that buying more because you got 20% off isn't come on, who are you? Let's talk point of views perspective. Third person omniscient for historical fiction. Yes, no, maybe everyone should do it. No one should ever do it. What's your perspective?
I don't believe in rules. I don't believe
Oh,
in
good.
rules.
Okay.
I think every novel is dictated by the story, right? And you have so many different ways of telling a story. I actually first wrote Modern Girls in third person, and I was having a problem connecting with the characters. So I rewrote it in first person, and that worked for that. I just, I'm looking over I'm cheating. I'm looking at my shelf to see
Wait.
what I have. I mean, there's a book called Confessions of the Fox by Jordy Rosenberg, which is an alternative fiction. He took the story of Mac the Knife, like the thief in
Mhm.
Old England, and he revisited it. So Jack is actually trans, but it's being told as a manuscript discovered by a professor, and it's told with footnotes. I mean, it's done in a completely unique style. I loved Britt Bennett's new book, The Vanishing Half, is about two twins, and that is third person, alternating between the twins. Fabulous book. So I don't think what's best for your story, but you should also be flexible that if you're writing it and it's not working, or if your critique partners say like something's not working, be willing to try to change it.
Mhm.
But no rules.
I have to say, I really liked that you went first person and took different points of view within Modern Girls, because it does feel more personal, and from an emotional connection point of view, even a physical connection point of view. It's like, oh, I can more readily feel, and it might be because the couple characters that I'm thinking of in particular are women,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm a woman, and maybe that was more of a connection. But putting that for me in first person brought it home in a way that I don't think even third person Omni could have done. So,
It again, it depends on the author, it depends on the book. I obviously read very broadly, and I love all of them. So I think that if it works for your story, then go for it.
excellent. I think a lot of folks may still be figuring that out in the story they're writing in Nano, and that also totally okay.
Totally okay. And in
Totally okay.
NaNoWriMo, you can always switch it for I mean, even not in NaNoWriMo, like you can switch it for one chapter and see if that chapter feels more organic. Like if you're feeling like, is this really working? Switch the point of view and say, is that working better? And a lot of times it'll be like, nope, it was right there first time, or, oh, maybe I should switch it all.
Yeah. A sample chapter, switching it to a different, or even a few scenes. I really like that idea. Good tip.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Excellent. So let's see. I'm just looking at some questions. We have our little script, which of course we're abandoning because Jennifer already said she doesn't believe in rules, and when we just go with it. It's a live stream. We're going to do whatever we want. So the community question I wanted to talk about: typewriter, handwritten, computer. Tell me your process for first draft, second draft.
Can I just say yes?
Above.
So, I usually I draft on my computer. I have a laptop. I draft on that. However, when I'm really stuck, I go to paper. I go to pen and paper always when I'm stuck. And I will do a free write, which is, you just sort of say for 20 minutes, I'm not lifting the pen off the paper and I'm just writing. And at some point you can be writing like, I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. And then you get tired of writing that and something usual will come. I do use Scrivener, the program, when I'm doing the novels, because it has the capabilities of really being able to move around chapters easily and outlining. I like a lot of the features, but I've also written in Word. I write in Word too, so it's not, you don't need anything special. But I do find writing by hand is a little bit more freeing. However, when I'm on a roll, computer is better because I can type faster than I can write. And so like when I really am like, oh, I know what I want to do. It's like, go right to the computer. And I do actually have a typewriter that every now and then I have my grandfather's old typewriter. I have pulled it out, but that is actually so slow. It's very, we've gotten soft. We've gotten soft on computer keyboards. There's so little that when you have to really pound down on the keyboard, it's harder.
The bigger problem with a typewriter for me might be the lack of a delete key, because I sometimes you can't even make out what word I'm trying to write down. So even Microsoft Word is like, we have no idea. We're just going to underline it and leave it right there for you for later. That's an ugh.
And that is a problem actually with the handwriting stuff. I actually was handwriting something the other day, and I said to my husband, like, what did I write? He's like, I have no idea what that word is. I'm like, I've even posted on Twitter sometimes, like, can anyone tell what I was trying to say here? I'm like, my handwriting is so bad. But generally, like, it shakes something loose so that way I can go to my computer and put something down. So
I think we're all going to go and follow you on Twitter just to wait for the hieroglyphics to come up. And you'll be like, what?
There has some.
Just be like a cave drawing. Like, I don't know. I think that's a buffalo. It doesn't make any sense. Definitely. Oh, be sure also to let us know your Twitter handle. We'll definitely share that with the community. We'll post that up in the comments as well. But are you Twitter, Facebook, Instagram? Do you TikTok? What socials do you enjoy?
I definitely do Instagram and Twitter. I do have a Facebook author page. I don't use it quite as much.
Mm-hmm.
I like Twitter a lot, and I like Instagram a lot. And Instagram, Twitter's pretty straightforward. Instagram, you sort of get a mix of my dog and me and writing and whatever. So I read in the old days, in the pre-pandemic days. I used to love writing. I have a cafe. It was like my office. It was called my office. And so there was always a lot of pictures of me at my office.
It's like those are popping up in your memories feed. You're like, oh, I
know. I actually have a satire about that was in Slackjaw about rules for writing at this cafe with me, a writer.
Yes.
Because
we're gonna need we need a link to that or something.
I can do that.
Definitely. just bemoaning the other day, like, oh, I miss. Someone said, I want to go to the wine bar and write and drink wine and interact. And I'm like, I want to go to the coffee shop and write and not talk to anybody, but have them near me because
it's fabulous. And the thing is, I've become friends with a lot of people there, who also are coming. And it's great because sometimes I'd like, do you know about this? Or how does this sound? Or, oh my gosh, what is the word I'm looking for here? So it's just nice to have that, but, not have to really, to be able to be in your own world.
Absolutely. So I'm going to come back to John's question in just a moment, but I'm so intrigued. Maisie just popped in and said, have you ever started a piece as maybe a memoir and then turned it into historical fiction and just kind of blew it up and enhanced it? And she's dealing with that right now. Is it really going to be a memoir, a true thing that happened in the past that's technically historical, but then really reworking it into a novel altogether? How much of your work is based on your memory?
So, the historical fiction I write really tends to be historical fiction. However, like I said, this one, Modern Girls, had a root in a family story. I have written memoir. I actually just have a piece out I've been submitting it to journals right now that I wrote about my great grandfather. That is memoir. However, I had my thesis advisor. His name is David Shields. He's a very prolific author, and he started out in fiction, and now he really only does nonfiction. And I remember asking him, I said, I feel like there's like a little bit of fiction in my fact pieces, and I'm not really sure what to do. And he said, look, there's more fact in my fiction and fiction in my fact. Don't worry about it. Just write it. And so I think what really matters is the story. So if you want to take a memoir piece and blow it up into historical fiction, do it. I would be careful and make sure you label it a novel, because people get in trouble when they, when they try to say, there is creative nonfiction, and you could say like, this is very, very creative nonfiction, but you just don't want to get in any kind of trouble for misrepresenting memoir. You're not going to ever get in trouble for making memoir fiction, but if you make, fiction memoir, that's, if you call it fiction, it's a little more problematic. So, but no, I completely agree. I have I wrote a piece, it was memoir about an ex-boyfriend who I'm still friends with. And I said, I didn't ask you, but I wrote this. And he said, look, when you're dating a writer, you just got to know that everything's up for grabs. Like that's just the risk. And the only only exception I make to that. I do have one exception I make to that. And that's my kids. I have occasionally written about my kids, and I always show it to them first, and they have veto power because they're kids, and it's not fair for me just to do that. But everyone else is fair game.
Okay.
And so, yeah, so I would say go for it.
Put on notice here. Everyone
maybe should go for it and make it. And I have to tell you that I had a cousin born last week, and her name is Maisie.
What?
So that's very exciting.
Oh my
Maisie,
God.
I love your name.
What a gorgeous name that is too.
Isn't it? Yeah.
So fun. Thanks, Maisie. Great question and great name. Let's hop over to John. So this is a two-part question, and they're somewhat unrelated. I'm going to pull it up on the screen. John, I hope this doesn't embarrass you, but I'm going to just do it anyway. Because being on an interview with an author means everybody's fair game to go in the live stream. Exactly. That's how it goes.
Okay.
So 2 parts. Yes. The first, what's the hardest phase of writing a novel? And then what is this about you being an early Amazonian working at Amazon? We need to dig into that second, I think.
Sure. So, all right. So the first part about writing a novel, the hardest part, I'd have to say, is everything. Writing a novel is not easy. You get this sort of glimmer of an idea, and you're so excited, and then you sit down, and it doesn't come out the way you think it is, like in your mind. Like you sort of envision this perfect thing. And so the hardest part is probably getting over that and writing the crappy draft of it. And just saying, like, that's okay. It's okay that it's terrible now, because I will make it better later. And I definitely think that getting down that first draft, and it's different for everybody. I've talked to a lot of the writers who are like, oh my God, I hate revision. I hate revision. I love revision. I love revision because I already have the idea there. I'm just making it better. Some people, revision is absolutely painful. So for me, the hardest part is accepting the fact that right off the bat, it's not going to be how I imagined it. How did I look working at Amazon?
I feel like John knows you, first of all. So
well, it's on I think it's in my bio. It's in my bio somewhere that I was there.
How did I miss that part? I got the snowshoeing part and not the Amazon part. But I love this. I love this.
So I had finished my MFA in Seattle, and I actually went and traveled for a year. I spent a while on a kibbutz. I spent about 6.5 months on a kibbutz in Israel, and I spent about a month and a half in Eastern Europe. And I came back, and I was freelancing, doing copy editing and proofreading. And I lived alone, and I was going crazy, right? Like, I think the UPS guy thought I was hitting on him, because every time we came in the manuscript, I'd be like, how are you? Do you want a cup of coffee? Like, I just was like I missed conversation. And so I was like, I need to get like a real job. And someone said to me, this was 1998. Someone said, that little internet bookstore is hiring copy editors. And I was like, oh, I've heard of them. Like, I actually had used them to come up with a list of books for my MFA thesis, right, for my essay. And so it was just a bookstore. And so I got the job, and I went to work there. And it was very funny, because I'd worked in publishing. And when I got hired, they apologized for paying me so little, but not realizing that coming from the publishing world, it was actually a bump up. So I was just like, yeah, it's terrible, but I think I can make it work. And it was very, very, very intense. It was very intense. I worked there from 98 to 2002. I quit to move out to the Boston area when I got married. It was a lot of fun. It was just a bookstore. When they launched at the time, they called the video store, because DVDs were not yet a huge thing. It was a natural for me, because, as I said, my undergraduate degree is in filmmaking. So I moved over and became an editor for the DVD and video store. And it was fun. I got to, in those days, way back in the ancient world, they cared about content. There was actual content on the site. So I got to interview celebrities. I got to fly to Los Angeles to interview people and go on press junkets and go see movies and write reviews. And it was super, super fun. It was crazy though. I mean, I worked 7 days a week. I worked really long hours. And in fact, 2001, when I did my NaNoWriMo novel, actually maybe it was the second one, is actually based on my Amazon time. And I say it's a terrible novel, but it was based on working at Amazon. And so it definitely, it's something I've thought about maybe revisiting at some point. But it was fun. And Amazon has really changed, but at the time it was all people who came from the literary world and the film world. And I always say the best thing I got from Amazon, I bought something that nobody else could get, which is my husband. We met at Amazon.
Was he on Prime Day? Was there
there was no Prime. There was no Prime. I mean, this is the ancient days where, like, during the holidays, we actually were shipped to warehouses to work. So I actually went to McDonough, Georgia for 2 weeks during the holidays to work the night shift.
Around the corner from me.
Yeah, I spent there and as you know, I like my bourbon, and I don't know if it's still this way, but McDonough was a dry town when I was working there on the overnight shift, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., picking really, really big things off the shelves. But it was fun. It was an experience, and it's nothing like that anymore. It's a completely different world.
It's robots
but yes, it's all automatic. So yes.
Yes, I remember the days when Amazon used to only sell books. I didn't realize because content wasn't my thing at the time. Like, I just need to buy a book, so I'm going to Amazon. All the other content, and I wonder if we could find that on the internet. We should
probably on the Wayback Machine.
Archives. Yes, the Wayback
find it. But no, it was really just sort of, it felt fun. It felt like, you get in trouble if you said Amazon. It's Amazon.com.
Oh.
And, when you went to orientation, I remember being told, we don't expect you to work like all the time. Like, if you want to take like a Sunday afternoon and go skiing, go do it. And I'm like, okay. So
if you want
a different world,
2 hours, yeah, or you take a bath, like, you have 15 minutes. Good for you. It's called balance, and we celebrate that.
I was single. It was fun. My friends, I made so many friends. It was all young people. In fact, actually, I was old. I started when I was 29, and I was like, everyone's like, "Oh my God, you're so old," because everyone was like, very young, and it was great. It was a lot of fun.
And you met your husband while he was also working at Amazon? How did that
happen? He was actually, we joke because he was in the finance department, and the job of finance was actually to get rid of the editorial department because, they have everything's automated now. So yeah, it was.
He's like, I know how I'll do it. I'll marry her. That'll teach her. Okay.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
Look, buddy, don't threaten me with a good time. I see that. Oh, that's awesome. What a great story. Thanks, John. I'm glad you stalked Jennifer on LinkedIn. Who knew that all of this was gonna come from just a little lightweight, just a little friendly stalking on LinkedIn, but excellent perspective. I'm trying to keep up with all the questions. I think we're in good shape question-wise. Yes. So far, so good. Oh, Slissa's got her Mai Tai. Go, girl. So let's pivot back to Nano. Here it is, the whatever day of the month it is. Help me. The 20th.
20th.
If it weren't for Nano, I would not have any idea what day of the week nor what date it was. So we've got 10 days left.
Yes.
People have really worked through that euphoria at the beginning. This is going to be amazing. That mid-month slump. Thinking back to the times that you did Nano, kind of where were you mentally, physically, emotionally around the third week?
Pretty much the same place I always am, just like in complete chaos. I don't think the third week is really any different than the first or the fourth or, pre or post. But no, it's definitely a time when you are starting to think maybe about padding the novel a little. And the great thing about padding the novel is that you might actually come up with something that you will use. One of the things I did in the continuity, the one that didn't sell, is when I started feeling stuck, I used to blog. I don't blog anymore, but I used to blog. And I asked people to give me lines or words or something. Oh. And I would work it into the novel. And then I'd post what that section was. And they didn't really know what the novel was about. And so they just completely ran the gamut. And it was very challenging, but it was fun. And some of the scenes actually made it into the novel. Some of them didn't. Actually, wait, hold on. I wrote some of them down. Someone actually wanted me to write the line, has anyone seen my turtle? So I made a scene on a plane where a kid lost a turtle, and then my character actually ended up stepping on it. But it was a full scene. Like, I came up with like a lot of words from it. It didn't make the ultimate novel, but it was there was someone who said to me to put in the line, "There's no way I'm going to see a doctor about that." So I had one of my characters get crabs. And I was like, so it was a way. So like, it's fun to like ask people, like, give me a line. Something else you can do is just pick up a book at random, open it up. I used to do this as a writing exercise with friends. We'd get together, we'd open it up, close our eyes, point to a line, and then write based on that single sentence that we hit. So you could totally do that. And just to give you an example, like if somebody said to you, write about aliens, like you can work that into any novel, right? If you're writing science fiction, obviously aliens land.
There you
If you're writing a contemporary novel, it's late at night, you're flipping through, you hit the sci-fi channel, this movie show about aliens comes on, or you have a character getting in an argument with a very conservative character who's like, we don't say aliens, all people are legal or whatever you want. If you're writing young adult, maybe there's a band, aliens land. In historical fiction, there was the alien acts, the immigration acts they were referred to as aliens. You can have someone looking at the stars, even, in a historical novel, a pirate novel, any kind of novel, saying like, gosh, I wonder what's out there. Like, you don't have to actually use the word alien. So anything anyone throws at you, you could work into your novel. And so that could be a really fun way to pad things.
Would you mind so we have a write-in scheduled for right after this.
Mm-hmm.
Would you mind if we used some of these? I'm kind of loving the turtle thing. The dog, obviously.
Absolutely.
Would you mind
whatever you like?
Did the one?
Do whatever you like.
Oh,
you know what? When you're a writer, everything's material. So it's all fair game.
I thought that was comedians, but
No, writers too. Definitely writers. Except for your children. I will say, except for your children.
Except for your children. They are off limits.
They are off limits. Yes.
Agree. Completely agree. The kitten, on the other hand, if she wakes up, she's made tons of appearances. She even has her own NaNoWriMo writing helmet.
I know, right?
So
I have to say that we adopted our dog about a year and a half ago, and the novel I'm currently working on takes place during Prohibition. And so we were trying to come up with a name. We actually named him Lansky after Meyer Lansky, who was a big bootlegger Jewish mafia guy in the 1930s. So my dog actually has a sort of writerly name.
That's terrific. I was thinking you were going to go, so I worked the dog into the novel because he's doing Saint Bernard style, like that'd
be good too. So I will tell you one thing. In Modern Girls, there's a brother and sister that nobody likes, Nathan and Sadie Krause. And I did name those for my children. The only time my children have played with things, my children are Nathan and Sadie.
I love that you just revealed that basically an Easter egg in your novel. That is tremendous. Oh God. So nano tips, we've talked about just getting the words out there, using placeholder words if you need to. Feel free to use UGG. Or my double pointy brackets issues, whatever works for you. What else? Oh, padding the novel, where to get some inspiration. And so for these write-ins that we're doing, if you have another thought cross your mind based off a prompt or not based off a prompt, or if you look over and you see, a Mickey Mouse calculator, how does Mickey Mouse work into your scene, and just make it work. I love that you suggested that and pointed out that it's not just padding your words. These are scenes that absolutely could make your novel, maybe takes your character in a completely different trajectory than what you originally thought. Maybe Jennifer's character was happy that she stepped on that turtle, and then took a very dark turn. So
she felt really bad about it.
For the record, she felt horrible.
She was not happy about it. But, yeah. No, and I mean, there's a lot you can do. When especially for those of you who are writing historical fiction, one of the problems of writing historical fiction is that you do all this research for like a single sentence.
Mm.
right? Like there's so much that goes behind it. But for NaNoWriMo, you can put it all in. Like go ahead and put everything in. Later on, you can cut things out. But why not use the knowledge that you have? Um, and it feels good too. It feels good to actually use it. And then later on, when you cut it, you don't mind because it's for the service of the novel. Um, so yeah, so use everything. Go ahead and put a dump in about for me for prohibition, like the Volstead Act passed, and boy, that was a pain, and it meant this and this and this people did it. So yeah.
Great suggestion. That whole exposition dump idea that you can go back and tweak during editing, fix up your showing versus telling at a later time to
Yes.
kill it. Plus, you've got that great information on the page. It could spawn a subplot. It could spawn another book. It could, just wind up on the cutting room floor, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Because what you've done in terms of your research informs your characters and informs you for future stories. So,
and I will say that in my document, I always keep a file called outtakes that I don't delete. I cut them and I put them away, and I almost never, ever, ever go back to it. But it makes me feel better because they say kill your darlings, and sometimes you do and sometimes you don't. But when you do, you can think like, okay, it's there, and I can come back to it if I need it. And it just is, it feels better than just hitting the delete button.
maybe just injure. Just put your darling in a coma, and that's okay too.
Yes.
Awfully violent up in here with the authoring and the editing, like killing darlings. Come on. That's. I think we talked about this just a little bit in writing exercises to kind of get the creative juices flowing. With the free writes, is that kind of stream of consciousness? Would you consider having a character do that during Nano to just kind of shake things loose?
Sure. I mean, you certainly can. And, a lot of times what I'll do, especially during Nano, and you can use this as your word count and then just take it out later, is do a stream of consciousness from the point of view of your character. Like have your character say like, what is it I want? Like, where am I going? How am I, what am I doing? And, a lot of times, like I said, if you're doing that in the voice of your character, there are pieces of it you'll keep. But it's definitely a way to get into the mindset of the character, and just doing any kind of free writing it loosens things up. It really, really does. And I advise doing it all times a day. Like keep a notepad by your bed and do it first thing in the morning, because when your mind is like completely fresh, you'll get something completely different than if you do it like late at night. And you might find that if you're a night owl, the late at night one works out much better for you. But the morning one might have some sort of weird insight from a dream you had that like, oh my gosh, it all comes together. So yeah, definitely.
And then suddenly your previous note and your voice memo with all the huffing and wheezing would make sense. Like, I get it now. That's a great practice. I find that when I'm writing in the evening, which may happen at this write-in right after here, they're like swear words. It's kind of stream of consciousness, but all of a sudden they're very sweary characters. And maybe that's normal for them. Maybe it's not, but it is like stream of consciousness, but they're frustrated about like, what the hell is going on here?
And another thing you can do when you're really stuck is descriptions. You can milk a description for pages, right? Like, looking behind me, like, the white bookshelves, and there were 3 shelves, and the books were all different heights, and there's some with color stripes on, and really get into it. And then again, some of it may be gone, but some of it, as you're writing that, you might realize like, this is actually a metaphor for something that my character's doing, or, oh my gosh, this is actually painting. This is like a really claustrophobic room, and this is exactly what I need. Yes. Or you might be like, and I'm going to delete this next week. So definitely, really detailed descriptions, and just practicing that is just great work. I mean, it's just great to practice it.
All of Nano, and really anytime, great opportunity for practicing and honing your craft and digging into those things that you normally wouldn't do. Pack a sentence with adverbs, pack in the over the top power words. Do you strip it back a little bit or a lot in editing? What you may find is that deep description of the fact that Jennifer's got books akimbo.
Mhm.
I've got like, these are color coordinated, y'all. Like this kind of, I can't find anything, but look how pretty they are. But it really kind of speaks to getting into the mindset of your character. And it makes Jennifer, as she mentioned earlier, a time of just complete chaos, which is like all the time, week 1 of Nano, week 3, whatever. And I am, although there's pantsing happening, I'm super uncomfortable with it. Like I've got like color coding and, so it could be a bit of a foreshadowing or an allusion to kind of what your character is really about. Despite what they say, what are they really about?
Exactly.
You like a deep, detailed description, and leave part of it in. Maybe not. Maybe you'll discover something about your character.
Maybe you will,
by how they are interacting with their scene, with their setting.
Or and it can take things in a completely different direction. I mean, characters will surprise you. You put them in one place and they notice something. You're like, why did they notice that? Like, I mean, I definitely have written things and I'm like, where did this come from? Like, oh my God, like, why are you doing this to me? Now I have to change everything else because this makes sense. So yeah. So
part of what is so enjoyable about being in as part of the Nano community is everyone sharing those stories of like, my character just told me last night he's like got an animal friend and I didn't plan for this, and like it's just a complete mayhem. And the community is so supportive because it happens to everyone. Your character comes to you one day and says, by the way, I now ride a white horse 24 hours a day. And I like, what are you doing? And they're like, follow me. And everybody goes, and it's really fun. So it can be harrowing, but it's encouraging to know that that's part of a lot of people's processes. And as Rymos, we're not out there alone.
So do you want me to give you some of my tips for getting those last 5,000 words in? So November 29th, okay? Do this November 29th. First of all, the first thing you do before doing any of this, make a copy. Do not do this on your original story. This is just to get the 5,000 words, right? This is just because and like I said, you win just by writing. Like, you don't need it. But if you really want that little badge, or, you want the discount on Scrivener, like some of the goodies you get when you win, you're going to do a lot of search and replaces. Obviously, you're going to search and replace your contractions, but who's your main character, right? If your main character is John, his name is now John James. And you're going to do a search, and his name now has 2 words in it.
And suddenly he's from Tennessee, because everybody in Tennessee has 2 names. So
absolutely,
yeah, got
absolutely.
it.
And so you can do that. You can do a search and replace on all your hyphens. Get rid of your hyphens. So Lily of the Valley with the hyphens is 1 word. If you put a space in instead of those hyphens, it's 4 words. Add an epigraph to your novel. Add a quote to the beginning. Add a quote to the beginning of every single chapter, right? You can do that. You can add, you read the novel, it has a little thing. Just add quotes, to set the scene for each chapter. Again, this is on a copy. You might decide you really like it and you want to keep it, but you can do that. Come up with your dream sequence. This is when you can have your really outlandish, dream sequences, whatever you like. That will work. This is only for NaNoWriMo. This is not for your real novel, but you could have your character sing a song. And the reason that's not for the real life is that that's somebody's work and you have to actually pay to use lyrics in your novel. But for the purposes of NaNoWriMo, if your character's in a car, have her sing along to the song, put in every single word of that song. These are, like I said, these are all just your November 29th Hail Mary, just get me over the line because I want the discount, or I want the badge to put on my site. So those are my tips for that.
Those are fabulous. Never would have thought about the singing of the song.
I've been doing NaNoWriMo for a long time.
Look. We've had a lot of authors come in and talk about how to get inspired and how to carry on with your craft. And now we've got Jennifer here breaking down the real stuff. She's like, make your character sing a song. Boom, 100 words. Like, yes.
Whatever you need.
Whatever you need. And it does kind of get the creative juices flowing. Maybe make up their own song and leave it in the story. So tons of opportunity there. Just having some tips and tricks for the last week and the last day and the last hours of NaNoWriMo. So helpful.
I see that someone's asking, Maisie actually is asking about some historic info.
Yes.
So I wanted to say two things. One is that if people are interested, in March, I'm going to be doing, it's going to be an asynchronous class through the Loft on writing historical fiction. It's going to be a 6-week class in March. But Maisie, you are welcome to email me, and I'm happy to, I need to know a little bit more about what era you're doing. I do have some sources I love too, and I always go back to. It's my website's Jennifer S. Brown. You need the S when you have a name like Jennifer Brown. I know it's like people are like, that's so pretentious using your middle initial. But if you're a Gen Xer, everyone's named Jennifer Brown. So yeah, and my email is just Jennifer at @JenniferSBrown. Maisie, you're welcome to email me, and I'll send you some because I have a lot of sources I love.
Oh, fantastic.
And I'm sorry, that's not just for Maisie. Anybody who wants to can email me. I'm not
say, like, if you've got sources
singling out Maisie.
Only Maisie, everybody else earmark.
No, everyone else, you're welcome to email. So, yeah.
That would be tremendously helpful. Like, we're happy to share that as well. If you send them, send your favorite ones my way, I can share those in our community and get people even more access to terrific resources for
happy to do that.
Historical fiction, for learning more about Jennifer S. Brown, and post your socials. I cannot wait to see the next time you can't figure out your own handwriting, and we can all help. We can all come together. It'll be like another mystery that the internet solves. It's going to be tremendous fun. Thank you. So we've gotten through all the questions. And if you've got a link to the writing historical fiction, the class you're going to teach.
I don't think the link is up yet, but I will put it on my website and Facebook and Twitter as soon as it is, because it's a March class. And so they're just sort of starting to organize that. But it's going to be at the Loft in Minneapolis, which is a fantastic writing center. I've actually taken classes there that I've loved. So I highly recommend it. So
that is wonderful. We'll keep our eyes peeled for that, and we'll pass along all the information that we've got. Jennifer S. Brown, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. This was so much fun. I really enjoyed it, and I hope that everyone can enjoy a cocktail or mocktail. I respect those who don't drink. My Sazerac is.
Sazerac. I was just gonna ask that again. Sazerac. One of our questions for the write-in, spoiler, is what would be your main character's favorite drink of the period? And I feel like Sazerac's going to make a return appearance just in a few minutes. Thank you again, Jennifer. This has been so much fun. Definitely.
My pleasure. Actually,
modern girls. And if continuity ever does get published, we want our hands on it.
Well, hopefully I have other books out I'm working on. So, so here I actually, if you're doing historical fiction or not, one I really like is, what does your character do for his or her birthday? Because different time periods, it's observed different ways, and some people don't even, a lot of immigrants didn't even know their birthday. So, and you can actually do that for contemporary, no matter what you're writing. So that could be a fun one for to do, birthdays.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much. I'm just going to jot that down so I don't forget it, because Dory Brain. Yes, that'll be a fun one. Tremendous interview. Jennifer, you've been such a wonderful guest. Thank you, Beth, who showed up for us. And for everyone who's watching the replay, thanks for joining us. We will catch you all again soon, and happy Nano. Join us back through the NaNoWriMo with AutoCrit Facebook group or on our YouTube channel for the historical fiction themed write-in. Bring your Sazerac, bring your bourbon, whatever you got.
Bye, guys.
Bye.